Sausage.
Hello, everyone. This is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Mark Kuznez, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about The Crew 2, a game where you can drive, fly, or boat yourself through an incredibly truncated and disproportionate version of the United States, all in the pursuit of completing numerous events that fill the map with more icons than anyone could ever hope to complete, because when you say icon, I say I can't. This is a weird one. Weird because The Crew 2 for me is very different than what The Crew 2 is for most. You could say The Crew 2 is a very different game for me and a few too. While The Crew 2 may be a racing game for most, it is a driving game for me. And in the case of The Crew 2, a flying game as well. Yes, boating is also present, but the less we talk about boating, the better. I'm saying boating sucks. It really, really sucks. You could say it drowned, because it's in water. Boats are in water. But the driving and flying do not suck, or drown, or crash, or anything bad. Now, you may be asking yourself, and by yourself I mean me, what the hell is the difference between a racing game and a driving game? Or in this case, a driving, flying, boating. You get the idea. Also, by the way, and before I continue, this episode, if you haven't already noticed, will feature an unedited portion of my cross-country drive from the game's version of LA to the game's version of what I think is supposed to be New Jersey. The difference between a racing game and a driving game is many. A driving game is a game where competitiveness is optional, where racing is optional. I'd say almost every open world racing game, if not every, is actually an open world driving game, because if you want, you can just drive around and relax as long as your heart desires. In The Crew 2, my heart desires that more than in any other driving game. Do I partake in races every now and again? Sure, but that's not why I'm here. For me, The Crew 2 is a game where I can just relax and drive with no goal in mind, and I love it for that. I turn off the UI and I just drive. I sometimes fly too, since flying was added to 2, and if you want a super casual flying sim, The Crew 2 is perfect for that. But I personally spend the majority of my time driving, especially since on Xbox we have Flight Simulator, which is casual friendly if you fiddle around with a little bit of this and that. Speaking of fiddling, I'll get to that shortly. Another reason why I'd say The Crew 2 is a driving game and not a racing game is something brought to my attention by my good friend Jedi, who is quite the racing aficionado and, surprising no one, a fairly big Star Wars fan as well, yo. What he brought to my attention is the fact that you can't customize the controls at all. Like, not at all at all. You can't fiddle with the sliders, so don't just gonna get you the fiddle in, or numbers, or whatnot. And there aren't even additional pre-made control schemes for different playstyles. There is one control scheme and only one control scheme. Thankfully, I like it due to its casual-centric ways, but if you're someone who likes tweaking the feel of the cars to your specific preference, you're shit out of luck. And this may be what most makes and reinforces my belief that The Crew 2 is a driving game first and a racing game second. A true racing game would allow you to fiddle with the controls so that no roof could contain your fiddling ways, but Trivia, Jedi, and anyone else who cares about the feel of handling would be immediately disappointed with what options are here, because the options here are nowhere to be found. However, if you're like me and don't mind waiting 5 hours for the game to load and connect to the server and wait, is it frozen? No, not frozen? Okay, cool. Then I think you'll have a pleasant time strolling through the streets and skies of The Crew 2, where cities are too close to each other, sometimes geographically way too wrong, and always far too small to be remembered as anything other than, oh shit, was that Chicago I just drove by? Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? And with that, let us trunk it. And by trunk it, I mean let's trunk this unconventional and uninformative episode, because I've nothing to say about the game itself other than I enjoyed driving it and couldn't care less about anything else in it. There are hundreds of things to do if you want, but if all you want is a way to drive without a care in your mind, you can do that, and God help me, I love that I'm allowed to do that in The Crew 2. And I'm going to break from this very loose and lazy throwaway script to say, and I think I've talked about this in the past, but late last year, my father had a stroke. It was very serious. He almost died. And it's been rough ever since. I've had nightmares on and off. I just had one prior to recording this episode, in fact, which is why I decided to go off script for this little bit. In this dream, this nightmare, my father came up to me and said, we we need to talk. I had an accident. I got 12 stitches. And this whole time, it all felt real. I thought he had another stroke or something, and I was feeling incredibly anxious. And then when he said it was because he was fiddling, I don't think he said fiddling, enough of the fiddling. When he said it happened after he was messing around a little bit more with Pikmin 4, I knew it was not real because I don't own Pikmin 4 and he doesn't play video games anymore. Didn't mean to rhyme there either. But when I woke up, I was having difficulty breathing. My asthma was on the verge of attacking me. And so having a game like The Crew 2 where I can turn off the UI, I can disengage with all of these systems in it and all of the various events, and I can just drive. It doesn't matter if I end up doing laps unintentionally because I don't even pay attention to the streets or the roads I'm going on and where I turn and where I don't turn. None of it matters. I can just drive and not think about anything. I can turn off my brain and just get lost in this very weird, and not even the shape of the United States is right. It's almost right, but not exactly right. And I think that's weird. But what's not weird for me is playing a game in a way that it's not intended to be played, but is able to be played that way. And I can't help but love The Crew 2 for that. So this may not be the most conventional, traditional, normal episode of Attack the Backlog, but I wanted to do it because maybe someone else out there will like to know that if you want, you can just drive in The Crew 2 and not bother with racing, flying, boating. Especially don't bother with the boating, and you can still have a good time. Anyway, that will do it for this here episode of Attack the Backlog. Once again, I am Marcus Nez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you'd like to support me and all of my nonsense, the shows I make and all that jazz, you could do that over at patreon.com/pxs. Speaking of the Patreon, in addition to that, you can find the site, the YouTube, the Discord, that their Patreon, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. That is, again, pxsausage.com. So go there if you want links to pretty much everything that has anything to do with me. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode. I genuinely do. And I hope you have a most wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. So, adios. Arrivederci. Bye.